Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really good to have you on this SAFE webinar. And we're looking at the really important subject of sustainability, of thinking about actually the UK government's goal for net zero by 2050. Well, we're 2024, so we've got a few years to go. And I'm delighted to welcome Brendan Day, who is director and founder of the Greener Global Funeral Standard. And also we've got Adam Masters, who's managing director of Tributes, who's both of these are associate members of SAFE, and we gladly welcome you both to this webinar. And so it's really important we think about how do we as funeral directors begin this journey? Some of you have started and are already on that journey, but it's kind of a bit of a minefield. So I hope you'll see this journey as Brendan engages with a couple of funeral directors who are members, and then later on Adam's going to join us and talk to us about suppliers. So thank you, Brendan, for being with us, and over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Terry, for giving me the opportunity to speak to members this afternoon on this subject. You may well ask why you should be reviewing your company's sustainability goals. If you've got any, I know it can at times seem very distant, the environmental issues that we're all facing, but it is the elephant in the room. Wherever we go, whatever we're doing, we're reminded that there is a crisis facing the world, whether we call it a climate emergency, global warming. It goes under many names. And as I say, it can at times seem quite a distant problem. We hear from scientists about global warming, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, parts per million, or that the ice caps are melting, or the sea levels are rising. So I say it can seem at times a bit sort of distant, but it is here, it is happening, and it is happening around us as we speak, and it will impact us. Our businesses. Only have to look back to 2022 when the UK picture on having practical implications on the world around us, whether it's the decline in over 80% of butterfly species or our energy bills. A really practical issue is Ofgem are currently consulting on the cost of gas between, I think it's 2026 and 2031, the structure for charging for gas. And they're suggesting that straight away there needs to be an additional £43 added to the bill, because as more people move to heat pumps to heat their houses away from gas, the cost of maintaining the gas system is falling on fewer and fewer people. So again, that's a practical issue that we're all having to face. And I think that is leading to three key drivers on us and our businesses. And those three drivers are statutory ones, electric cars. We've heard about the electric cars in 2030, when the diesel and petrol cars will be phased out. The last government put that back to 2035. The Labour government made a pledge to bring it back to 2030. So in 6 years' time, diesel and petrol cars will be phased out, new ones. We see the cremation process notes, the new guidance notes, which is sat with DEFRA at the moment. They've been consulted on, and that includes a requirement for funeral directors to report to crematorium the amount of carbon in each coffin they bring to the crematorium. Now, again, that'll be interesting to see what crematoria do with that data. But again, it's a statutory change. And finally, on statutes, from April 2024 here in Wales, all businesses now have to segregate waste by law, and they have to have a plan to show how they do that. And I'm sure that will spread across the UK. Consumers, we see more and more reducing their use of single-use plastics. Waitrose say that's reduced by 60%. 34% of consumers choosing brands based on ethical credentials. That's a report by Deloitte. And also Deloitte say that 43% of consumers are choosing brands because of their environmental values. And finally, there are investors in companies. And to meet their environmental sustainability and governance reporting requirements, they again are expecting businesses to do a lot more for the environment. So it's out there. We all have to do something about it. And we found, working with our clients, one of the key issues is knowing where to begin. Funerals, after all, are very complex processes, and they include a number of different providers, starting when the funeral director takes the deceased into care, everything that involves, then moving on to crematoria, again, everything that involves, and then finishing perhaps with a crematory memorial, the cemetery memorial. But there are a number of people in that chain, in that supply chain. So where does a funeral director begin? Where does anyone begin to green funerals? Well, we believe we've identified there are two key areas which need to be addressed. Firstly, there are three key suppliers to a funeral: the funeral director suppliers, and then crematorium. So we produced a standard for each of those areas. And then secondly, our users have told us what they value is a structured approach, a structured audit, so they can look across their business, see where they can make improvements and where they're doing well, because we mustn't lose sight of the fact there's a hell of a lot of good work going out there that everybody should be shouting about. So I say we produce three standards. Firstly, the funeral director, because we believe the funeral director is pivotal, because you will be able to influence suppliers. By you adopting greener standards, greener, more sustainable ways of working, you will then influence what the suppliers produce for you. And equally, when advising families, advising them of the crematoria, the different crematoria, and what they provide, you are able to influence how crematoria move forward. But we really think it's important that when supporting the environment, it needs to be simple. It should not be scary, difficult, or costly. It needs to be part and parcel of how we work. So there are a number of schemes out there, whether it's our green standard, ISO 14001, B Corp, and the Association of Green Funeral Directors, what they do. You need to check to make sure it's affordable. Is it appropriate for your company, for the size of your company? And really important, how much work is involved? Do your due diligence. Check these various areas, because what you don't want to do is end up getting involved with the scheme, producing something which then ends up on a shelf. We all need to do something, so it needs to be practical, and it needs to be what suits our businesses. Green, what we have done, we developed our scheme with the sector, for the sector. So we've had funeral directors, suppliers, and crematoria give us input. It's designed to support funeral directors on their environmental journey, provides a structured review of the business, and we'll get into this some more detail later on. It's user-friendly, all online. Again, check to see any systems you're looking at, does it work for you? Is it easy? Is it online? Can you complete part of it and put it down? Funeral directors are very busy people. They can't sit down and spend days at a time working through a detailed process. And ours is a pragmatic two-step process. As I say, we will look at this in some detail now. as we crack on, because I know we're up against time limit here. Firstly, it's so important, these three areas, whichever scheme you go with, you need to be able to embed sustainability into your culture. And we've got Lucy Porter to tell us a bit about this in a few moments. As I say, if it's not embedded in the culture, then you're not likely to achieve anything. An environmental review of your business, we look at that with Hannah Leverton. That is that structured audit. So it looks at all the different areas. Areas can easily get overlooked, or where you might be able to make it greener, more sustainable, or where you're doing something you should be shouting about. And finally, with Adam, I'd like to look at something called the funeral pound. How we can do more than just our immediate businesses to improve the environment. So let's look at first embedding sustainability. The first step for us is adopting an environmental policy. It demonstrates commitment to sustainability. And this needs to be adopted by senior people in the organisation and cascaded down. So that way, everybody is committed to it. The staff, and also you also signal not only to staff, but also your clients and your colleagues that these changes you want to make. And importantly, to suppliers. It shows the direction of travel, and it'll make more suppliers with similar views want to work with you. You have to have an environmental policy to say this is the same. If you want to adopt ISO 14001, you'll still need an environmental policy. We provide one. You can use your own if you haven't got one. But once you've adopted the policy, you must be able to provide evidence of the policy being embedded in the organisation's culture so that all the staff are aware of it. It may be through your inductions with staff, team talks, just put it on the notice board or regular chats. But if it's not embedded, as I say, then it's unlikely that it will have much change on the organisation. We feel that it is such an important step forward adopting an environmental policy, that providing you can show it embedded, that will gain you the Bronze Award, which we provide. And now I'd just like to hear about Lucy Porter's experience of adopting an environmental policy. Good morning, Lucy, and many thanks for your time today to have this discussion on sustainability and how you embed it within your organisation. I know you haven't been very well lately, so as I say, many thanks for coming in. So really, just as a starting point, what part does an environmental policy play in your organisation?
Well, we've had an environmental policy for many years, but in the last 3 to 4 years, it's become much more wide-reaching, and it hasn't been the kind of environmental policy that we see in many companies that just pays lip service to the environment to keep customers happy. Our environmental policy and our approach to all things sustainable is all encompassing across our business. So we don't just say, oh, we always think about recycling and we always think about how we travel to work and all these generic things that many companies offer. We think about it in every single aspect of everything we do. And I expect all of my employees to reflect this through everything they do within the business too.
So how do you ensure that your employees are aware of your environmental policy and what you expect of them in ensuring the business is sustainable?
All of our employees, one of the first training courses they do when they join us is actually an environmental awareness course. So that's a really good starting point. It's a generic course. It's not specifically for funeral directors, but it's very good to just bring people up to speed before then we introduce them to our environmental policy, which we also expect them to read and sign when they start with us. Whenever there's any reviews to that, it's shared out throughout the company, and again, everybody's expected to read it and be aware of it. It's on all our notice boards throughout the business, and it's also shared with our suppliers and other partners, so they know what our goals are, and also it kind of hopefully explains to them why we do things the way we do them. We also have regular meetings with our teams, and everyone is also really encouraged to put forward suggestions to how we can improve our sustainability in their particular area of work, because they're the people that know their work areas the best. And we always get really good feedback from staff, and then we take it away and see, you know, it's a continual improvement approach. And we always know we can do better, and there's always new products coming on the market and different people offering different services, and we're really open to that.
That sounds really good, but I'm sure it takes a lot of your time and resources to reach that level. So what are the benefits do you feel it gives to your business having such a sustainable culture that you've got?
I think firstly, our clients are more and more demanding, and I'm sure any funeral director will tell you that over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, clients have become a lot more particular about what they want. The personalisation of a bespoke send-off is absolutely top of people's lists, and we think that making sure you're ticking the environmental boxes for clients as well is just as important as all those other additional things people are looking for. We've reached a stage now where people are actually coming through our door and saying, oh, we weren't sure if we would go to funeral director A or funeral director B, but we love the sound of what you do for the environment and in the community, so we chose you. So that's really nice to sort of see that happening. So obviously, yes, we're getting additional business when people are making choices in that way. But also when they do come to us, we have then got a wider range of options to offer them, including options that they know that we've checked out on their behalf to ensure their sustainability. And hopefully it comes across to all of our clients who are interested in sustainability that we're not just picking any old suppliers. We have a really stringent and thorough process in place where we look very clearly at our suppliers. We have a supplier code of conduct that runs alongside our sustainability and environmental policies. So, you know, we make sure that what we're offering to clients, we have researched fully as well and can offer these things with confidence.
That's excellent. And what about two other areas just I'd like to explore with you? One is staff. Do you think do your staff appreciate it? Are they more fulfilled in their work? And also costings. I'm just thinking obviously cheap energy is a thing of the past now. So does it help in those areas of energy and staff as well?
Definitely. There are some areas that you look at where there are some slightly increased costs related to the more sustainable or greener option. I have always very much thought, well, the more and more people that choose these options, then hopefully the economies of scale in due course will bring things in line. And when we started first looking at energy suppliers, for example, the greener options, it was, a sharp intake of breath. But thankfully things have begun to even up a bit, and we do a lot of negotiating, both to make sure we have got the right supplier for us and it's not just someone paying lip service to the environment, and that the costs are reasonable, because obviously a business's bottom line is really important. We've got to make sure that we don't want to be putting funeral prices up to cover, for example, our super green energy costs. So so it's something that we always try and keep in balance and always keep a check on. And actually this year is the first full year that we've been fully green suppliers on the energy side, having just changed our final one across earlier this year.
No, I think it is. I think that pragmatic approach is so important, You can't be green at the cost of everything else. You've got to adopt a pragmatic approach. So what about your staff working in a sustainable manner? Does it make them feel more fulfilled? Do they get any more fulfillment out of their work?
Do you know, I think they get something different out of their work, because I think they think a lot more. So rather than just doing what they've always done and the way they've always done it, using the same suppliers they've always used, it just makes them think. It makes them stop and think about their decisions, which is really nice. And the other really nice thing is that sometimes staff will say to me, do you know what, we've changed things at home as a result of having greater awareness at work. They've realised that some of the stuff they do at home isn't great. So they've gone away and used the skills that they've picked up at work to improve their home life and their home sustainability, which is absolutely ticks every box and makes me smile from ear to ear.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point on which to end, Lucy, for that insight into you and your business, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brendan.
That was Lucy Porter from Stourbridge. And something I'd just like to stress, which perhaps individuals might not be clear about, it's important to realise that in greening the funerals, we want to make all funerals more sustainable. We're not talking specifically about natural burial or woodland burial. It's about making the way you deliver the funerals, every funeral. As Lucy's saying, it's throughout her organisation. So every funeral she does will be done that little bit more sustainably. I'd just like to move on now quickly to the second step. Having embedded sustainability in the organisation, it's important to complete that audit of the business, shining the light into all those different areas to see if there any need improvement, where savings can be made, or, as I say, any areas you need to be telling everybody about. In our process, we start by looking at client engagement. Are you advising your families of the green alternatives, greener ways of delivering floral tributes, instead of the oasis, instead with the wrapping, using local crematoria, so there are fewer miles, especially with direct cremations. So as to how you deal with the families, the choices you give them. We then look at services, which are really important. When we talk about services, we're looking at fuel costs, gas, electricity, and also water. You know, the water industry produces a huge amount of carbon just getting clean water to your taps. So it's important we don't waste the water. So we look at things like toilets, washing vehicles, all those sort of small areas, but these all add up. Premises are perhaps the most important area, because as we all know from our homes, we lose energy through windows, through walls, through the roof, and the more energy we lose, the more it costs the business. So it's really important we look at all parts of the premises. Then we move outside to areas like fleet. As we've already mentioned, we'll be having to look at electric vehicles sooner perhaps rather than later. But even with the diesel cars and petrol cars, it's so important. Are they regularly serviced? So they're using as least amount of fuel as possible. Are they driven in a sustainable manner? How do you clean them? So there's areas there. And biodiversity. When I mentioned biodiversity, I must just come back to Lucy Porter. When we visited Porter's, she's got a small garden outside in her grounds where she grows a lot of mint. She likes her own mint tea. And I was amazed to see a tiny moth there. And it's the first time in my life that I'd seen a mint moth that specifically lives on mint. And that's sort of where, just amazing how much biodiversity you can support and produce from premises in inner cities. And, we're not talking about large gardens. We're talking about whatever you've got available. It can be window boxes as well, planters, just to give the wildlife a place, a little oasis within cities. Finally, again, as Lucy mentioned, community engagement. It's so important to be engaging with the community, telling them what you're doing for the environment. going to Rotary, perhaps going into schools, having open days when the public come and visit you, to get that environmental message out there, encourage them to think about the environment. It's all about building on each other. And then once the audit has been completed, it has to be submitted with the evidence, and then you receive an award with our process, silver, gold or platinum, depending on the score. And importantly, you also receive an improvement plan. So you have this basis, so the following year, you've got a basis to build on, you have an improvement plan, and I'm sure it's the same with the other schemes, ISO 14001 in particular. It's all about continuous improvement, so we can deliver more for the environment as time goes by. So I'd just like to move on to our next guest recording, and this is Hannah Leverton, who's been through the complete process now with us, and they've gained their gold award. I thought it'd be useful, especially as you've been through the process now of adopting an environmental policy and then auditing your company to see where environmental improvements could be made. So to start with, I thought it'd be interesting to know, did you find the process helpful in looking across your business?
Yes, very much so. I don't think there's anything like it in the funeral profession that I could find. And obviously, we'd got to a point where we wanted to be greener. We had an eco-hearse, pioneered in 2013. That was sort of the real beginning of our commitment, I suppose. I think we've always done a lot in the background, but that was a big, obviously big financial commitment and operational commitment from the company. And I think we were just needing to formalise our agenda on the greening of funerals. And we've always really pushed for eco funerals, but obviously it's really important that we offer everything, and anything to what people choose. But that has always been our sort of part of our brand and our values. So yeah, we've been looking for something to formalise the process and our commitment, and to recognise our commitment, I guess. So the whole process from meeting you has really sort of taken us forward formally as a company, from having a policy, a PDF, to actually a full commitment of an audit and an improvement plan.
That's good. And with the audit, obviously it's a structured process, as I'm sure it is, with any other schemes. And did you find that useful? And did it sort of take you into parts of the business where perhaps, it's not so obvious, like the eco-hearse, where you clearly were leading the way? This is sort of, I'm just thinking like more the back office and those sort of areas, which perhaps aren't so obvious as areas where you can green the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's focused our minds and made us really evaluate what we already do and actually where we need to do better. It's obviously very in depth, and it did take a lot of work for someone like me, but I could do that. So it is a commitment, but I think it's one we just have to all be doing. Whether we like it or not, we have to be doing it. And I think, the areas that were new to us that we sort of focused on through the questions asked were, things about, water usage from, in our toilets. We would never have thought about that, and putting in something to measure the water usage, for example. We were already doing things like shredding our paper, so that everything's always very confidentially destroyed, but we've always reused that in the pillows and the coffins for the deceased. So we've been doing that for years, but hadn't actually really acknowledged, or taking batteries to recycling centres instead of just putting them in the bin. We've always done that. Never really just thrown things away. That's always been our sort of ethos, but I don't think we'd formally addressed it or recognised it until now.
And do you think this, taking those steps and looking at how biodiversity in the community, do you think that helps as well with the business when you think how it interacts with the community and your environmental work, letting the community know what you're doing?
Yeah, I think that's where we've really that's where we've been lacking, and I don't think we've thought that far. In the wider, we're very linked to our community. Obviously, we're community led. I mean, we are nothing without our community. But I think on this aspect, we hadn't thought of joining it up. And what that process of the audit and the questions have made me and us realise is, bringing biodiversity into our branches we're in a city London, so we don't have outside space much. There's a couple of branches with a garden and so forth. But actually, we could easily put in some of these small initiatives like bird boxes or, anything to encourage wildlife into the garden and insects into the area, even on our window boxes or, small wins like that. So being able to talk to the community or maybe even get them to come and help do some stuff with us and therefore come and see our premises and maybe open up to them and use that as a sort of way of putting us on their agenda and making them think about us as not just this very established independent funeral business that's been going obviously a very long time and is quite well known, but actually we are sort of forward thinking and we put the work in and we want to work harder, particularly for the environment.
Yeah, I think that's some really good points there. And I think it's important because your families will be coming from your community, won't they? So if they know your ethos and the culture of your organisation and it reflects their ethos, when they arrive, then they'll be able to ask for choice. And part of the audit is giving families choice, because that's the most important thing. It's not about forcing people down a particular way, forcing them to have particular coffins or particular types of funerals. It's make them aware of the options and then letting them choose. And do you feel that those two would go together, sort of working with your community, and then when they come in, offering that choice?
I think absolutely, and I do think the funeral directors working with us, our amazing team, I think that they really do that already. I think what would be better would be to make the spaces physically not greener, but to make more of the areas that we have as a sanctuary for people as well, a very calming. Why not use this actually as a really lovely way? And I think other FDs are probably, some of them are doing this, but to use plants more, even the inside plants if we haven't got any external space, but actually to green up our premises a bit. Why not actually?
Why not?
And actually that sets the agenda, doesn't it? It shows that we are thinking about it, but it's also we all know the facts and the research about greening of spaces is much better for our mental health and our physical health. So we should be doing that in our premises. I think that's a responsibility we can follow up with. It's quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. I think it's very exciting. I think as well, well, you touch on there, greening the space you've got. It's about that pragmatism, isn't it? Where we can all be doing something. We can, taking those small steps, which together, across the whole community of funeral directors, suppliers, crematory, cemeteries, if we all do our bit, times that by 600,000 deaths approximately a year, it can make a huge, huge difference. You mentioned their teams, your team. How have your team reacted to the audit and what you've been doing?
They've been quite interested actually, and interestingly last week we had a all staff operational meeting, which was one of the first. We haven't done it for a long time. It'll be the first of many. We're going to do it quarterly now, just to improve our internal communication with everybody and each other. And that was one of the things we sort of talked about and announced, and some of the funeral directors would like to see the improvement plan from you. So we've already shared that because they're interested in doing better. We've now received gold, but why shouldn't we get platinum, and what could we be doing to better ourselves? So I think people are at different levels. I think, personally, it's not on some people's agenda, and others it is. But it's for us to sort of align that, I think. And together.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think there's any impact on cost savings when you carry out these reviews and on sort of your clients? It's not for everybody, we know that, but in particular around cost savings.
Yeah, I think one of the things from the audit that you recommended was that we could put the cistern for the water in the toilets. Little, I mean, they were £10 for 3, I think, when I bought them. Just to stop the water continuously refilling, just so we could actually reduce our water usage. So inevitably that will reduce our money, especially on utilities. We've already sort of got automatic sensors and things like that to stop lights being on continuously. So we do a lot of that, but it's made us think about, our IT equipment being on more than, we've got standby set, I think. But yeah, there's cost savings for sure.
Good. And so overall, was the process difficult, challenging? Would you recommend it? And again, I would stress, there are other systems out there, ISO 14001 B Corp. There's other things out there, but it's all about doing something for the environment. So I just wonder, carrying out that audit across the business, would you recommend it?
I would, because it's funeral profession specific, focused. We work in a very niche profession. Most people haven't experienced a death or a funeral until they come to us. It's not something they do every day. They're not consumers of funerals, until they're probably later in life, maybe, but they don't know what to expect. And I think it was quite intense. It was thorough, but I think it has to be rigorous, doesn't it?
Yes.
And that's what makes us take it seriously. Not everybody has a me in the company to give the time to it, but I'm sure people can commit to it. It was difficult just in terms of collating the information. I had to work with about 6 different colleagues to get that information together. But actually, that's quite collaborative, and we sort of talked about that as a way of working together, as an example of how we can communicate better across the company and share information. So I think that can only be a good thing, but it did take time. Yes. It will take time.
Yeah,
but I think
it doesn't have to be done all at once, does it?
No, you helped. You helped answer questions as we, as I went through it. It probably took me. It took me a good few weeks on and off. I mean, not full time, obviously, but that was the sort of the reality of my resource.
Yes, I think it's important, isn't it, that if you invest your time in it, it's got to be meaningful. It's not giving your time and then have something which can be easily discredited as greenwashing. So
yes, and I think also we were, when we talked to you originally, this was the first part of looking at B Corp later, and it wouldn't be time wasted. We'd use all of this in the application for the B Corp status, which is kind of where we want to also get to. But obviously B Corp isn't just set up for the funeral profession, so this is why it doesn't have to compete. It can work together, from what I've understood so far. I mean, I'm still learning. We're all still learning.
Absolutely, I think we're all on the journey, aren't we? I think that's a really important point. We're on that journey transitioning to somewhere greener. Whether it's in our work lives, our home lives, wherever, we've got to get to somewhere better. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's no use gluing ourselves to a hearse or something. You might get a lot of publicity, as some people do, but it doesn't produce anything positive. So on that point, I'd just like to thank you for taking your time, and congratulations on getting your Gold Award.
Well, thank you. And I should say it's been very supportive, actually, as well. And providing the evidence was good and doable. It was a screenshot of an email, or, you make it doable. So, so it's been very supportive and insightful. It's focused our minds, so thank you.
No, thank you, and thank you for taking the time out today to record this short presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I think what we've looked at now is the fact that you need to embed sustainability in the organisation. You then need to go through the organisation and look to see where you can make improvements, whether it is just those small things I mentioned, reducing the water going through the systems in the toilets. Or on a day like today, is your air conditioning regularly serviced? Is it set at the right temperature? And you shouldn't have your windows open. So those are sort of really basic things we can look at. And just moving on, what can you do next? Where can we go? How can we make any further gains? And that's why I think the next part is going to be really important. And that is the value of the funeral sector. Now, the value there is 2.5 billion. That's a figure. And that's a conservative figure. I'm told it could be near 3 billion. So overall, through our suppliers and everybody else, we could be looking at a massive figure, £3 billion spent around funerals. So you imagine as funeral directors looking for best value all the time. You also thought green. When you're spending your money with different people, you thought, how can this help green the environment more? And on that point, I'd just like to bring in Adam Masters from Tribute again, who before he worked at Tribute, I think you were a consultant, were you not, Adam?
I was indeed, yes, Brendan.
With a number of organisations. So really trying to discuss with you, do you feel your customers can shape the culture of your organisation towards your mind and other suppliers they deal with?
Yeah, I think so. And funeral directors have that real choice to ask the questions of the supply chain, and ultimately to look at suppliers who can demonstrate that they're sustainably aware and are very supportive in the sector. As a supplier, no supplier can say that they are sustainable. It's all about proving the data behind those claims. And I'll be very honest and open. So when I took over running Tributes back in 2019, we were far behind what I would consider to be an acceptable place for our environmental credentials and sustainability, and having both those key areas embedded into our culture. Many supplier associates would have had sort of thoughts much further down the line than us, and in fact many supplier associates have done a great deal to demonstrate those exact two things, that it's embedded in their culture. So I suppose I'm going to talk very broadly, not about Tributes, but about some of the decisions that I've had to make to try and drive change within our organisation. And it's the funeral directors that can start that process, and that was certainly very a conscious thought in my mind. One of the first things that we did was at board level was set up what we called an environmental task force team to look at how we're going to go about this journey. You mentioned earlier, Brendan, it's quite scary just thinking, where do you start? And that's where your audit process can be extremely beneficial. We decided to go down the route of ISO 14001. And we became certified in November 2023. And that was a very long journey. And that in itself, I think Lucy Porter mentioned about things like awareness training for your staff. It makes you think not only about the processes that you have to put in place, how you can audit those, and how you can challenge your supply chain to make sure that your credentials and what you hope to purport to say in the future can be verified. And ultimately, that process enables us to have a starting point. Hannah also mentioned about B Corp status. That's one of our goals in years to come, to be a B Corp company. And we found that after the ISO 14001 process that we went through, that really helped embed the culture of environmental awareness and sustainability into our organisation. Got a staff thinking about all aspects of improvement of our waste streams, the significant reuse of cardboard in our packaging, scaling down our packaging, go into non-branded packaging that's not coloured, that is a much better production process in terms of energy consumption, and ultimately, you know, we want to get to that part where we can hand on heart say that we've clear data to back up that we can sing for the trees with regards to environmental credentials. We're still not there. As I mentioned earlier, I think many associate members of SAFE will be far more advanced than Tributes, and others may be starting the journey and asking those questions of their organisation about how can they improve. But I think what is clear is everybody has sustainability on the agenda, and that's going to drive change that's positive for the funeral industry. So yeah, in answer to your question, I think funeral directors can help drive that change by challenging their supply chain, getting evidence from their suppliers with regards to their environmental credentials, and looking to use those suppliers that are very much in that space and are always looking to continually improve.
That's great. And by you being greener, and clearly that will make your products greener, which you're supplying to your funeral directors. So that will reduce their carbon footprint, their businesses. And again, that reduces the overall carbon footprint of the funeral.
Absolutely. And I think that's the sort of difference in having a structured approach. Whereas before we'd be very conscious about our material choice, and we'd always have the background thought about whatever material we choose, we want to make sure that it's as best as it can be for the environment. But when you actually start looking at quite a large product range, and most of the suppliers in this space have significant number of products that they sell into the funeral industry, into funeral directors, it's having a process that looks at all of your products, and how can we improve and make each one of them better from the environmental credential. And that's certainly a journey that we've started and that we've begun. We want to be able to validate all of our products and give things like carbon life cycle assessments for all of the products. I'm sure many other suppliers are also starting that process. It does come at a cost. It comes at a significant investment to the suppliers. I think it's a cost that we should welcome, because ultimately, as we heard from Lucy and from Hannah, being able to engage with the consumer and give the consumer choice when we know we're in a society now that is very much looking at anything that we buy, what its environmental credentials are, and funerals should be included within that, to ensure that that is a conscious choice. And I think that will become more prevalent over time, and suppliers should be a big part in demonstrating the products that have been used in funerals, how good or the choice that they can have with regards to environmental credentials.
Do you think this is an area that the representative trade organisations could look to work together? I'm just thinking of membership of the FSA and as being SAFE members as well. Do you think this is something that we could be discussed across those organisations as well, to adopt a more unified approach to the environment?
I would say yes, definitely a joined up approach with all stakeholders in the funeral industry is a good thing. I'll flatter you now, Brendan, by saying actually what you've done with regards to the Greener Globe Funeral Standard, that's quite a good starting point, because it's a great business for you, but it's also getting engagement, and it's getting funeral directors, suppliers, and crematoria all thinking about the same thing. So the more we can enhance those joined up conversations, I think would be extremely beneficial for the industry.
That's great. I just wonder if on that point we should invite Terry back. So I know he was anxious for the members to have a Q&A session that both Adam and I could sit in on and try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Brendan, and thank you, Adam. Really very interesting and quite a comprehensive approach to this. I think so. What we've heard from Lucy and Hannah is they're thinking, and Adam is thinking strategically about, okay, where do we step in and how do we step in? One of the questions, Brendan, that members will ask is about sort of measuring in terms of carbon usage. And do you have any guidance on sort of credible standards or how we view these kind of things?
Um,
Do you
go
want to
on,
go
go on,
first?
Brendan. From a supplier perspective, Terry, it's a minefield once you start the process of identifying which route to go down. There are many consultants out there that will charge you, huge amounts of money for engaging in their systems, and I suppose each supplier has to look on merit as to the route that they want to go down. There are standards. So for life cycle assessments, there's an ISO standard called ISO 14040 and 14044. So that sets out the framework of what a life cycle assessment should be, how it should be conducted, and how you report the data. One of the biggest things that I found in the initial research is, how do you verify the data? Because when I go to my customers, we've committed to have life cycle assessments in place by the end of 2025 for all of our products. And of course, we want to start on the products that impact the most. So coffins are the ones that we're currently working on to give that data to our funeral directors. But verifying that data is tough. There is a website that I can put on the link that we're using in terms of verifying data, and it's called ecoinvent.org. It's not cheap to have the membership of that, but once you've got that data, that really helps to verify claims that your suppliers may be giving you with regards to the production of the raw materials and their energy consumption whilst they're manufacturing products on your behalf.
Excellent. Brendan, before you reply, can I just say to members watching, if you have any questions for Brendan or Adam, please use the chat box below and type in the question and we'll fire it to these two professionals. Brendan, over to you.
Yeah, just picking up really where Adam left off. When we set off in creating the standard, we also looked at carbon schemes, and we were approached by some companies to see if we wanted to use their schemes. And we decided to move down a different route because we felt that funeral directors and other members of the sector would much rather have something more pragmatic and more around their business where they can see things being achieved, such as, like Anna said, about reducing the water flow. And they're very practical things across the whole business, rather than coming into a business, looking at different aspects of it and giving out a carbon figure for the entire business. And certainly, on life cycle assessments as well, we were asked about that. And at one stage, we were asked to do a life cycle assessment for a funeral. Now, again, this was just such a massive undertaking that we felt that it just really wasn't practical to suggest to funeral directors, or crematorial suppliers, that we would do life cycle assessments of their entire businesses. It'd just be completely unaffordable for the vast majority of funeral directors. So we went down much more what we felt was a pragmatic route based on ISO 14001. We don't give out at ISO 14001. I must stress that, but we've adopted that model, and our assessors are accredited to do ISO 14001.
I think that's where the joined up thinking also works, Brendan, that if the supply chain and the suppliers to the funeral sector can provide life cycle assessments from cradle to gate, i.e. from the, give that carbon emission of that product housed at the funeral suppliers, then it's very easy to work out what that impact is on the overall funeral, because you're then calculating the journey of the product to the funeral directors, and that then feeds into the funeral director making their life cycle analysis of the funeral itself. So I think it has to be a joined up approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Brendan, Adam, you've talked about B Corp, you've talked about ISO 14001, we've talked about the Green and Global Funeral Standard. There are other offerings, and Brendan, you've referred to that actually consistently through this presentation. Could you give any sort of, without prejudicing yourself, just a summary of different approaches?
Basically, with our Green and Global Funeral Standard, the approach is evidence-based. Key is looking at all aspects of the business, identifying areas for improvement, and then I say providing that evidence. Now, if you take ISO 14001, it is that process. It is evidence-based, but it is much, much more detailed, I think it's fair to say, Adam. There's a lot more to be done. So say ours, it is specific to the funerals, and we feel it is more doable for the majority of independent funeral directors to do, rather than something which is, a much larger process. B Corp, I must admit, I don't know a great deal about B Corp. I know, again, that can be, people tell me that is sort of another level up again on detail. And also with all these things, with more detail comes more cost. So they are significantly more costly.
Absolutely. That's really helpful. Thank you. And it's about really achieving first, second, third steps, isn't it? And
absolutely, as we said, it's all about transitioning.
Yeah,
it's about taking those initial steps and then building on those foundations. And because, as I say, we're all about moving to a better place. It's not about banning cremation. We do get into trouble at times with our green friends who feel that cremation should be banned, or chipboard should be banned, or hearses should be banned. Those things aren't going to happen. The public, this is their funeral, and this is what funeral directors are brilliant at providing, and it's not going to stop. So we need to just gently transition somewhere and keep building until we get there.
Fantastic. Adam, any thoughts or reflections on the journey ahead across the sector?
I think just having structure in your organisation is a very good starting point, and being able to have a process that at all levels in your business everybody understands. It has to be driven from the top, so it has to be an accepted decision by the board or the partners or whatever the structure is within the organisation, and then really put huge amount of emphasis into managing the process, because gone are the days where you can just have a sustainability policy, an environmental policy, and you think that's enough. The public demand much more than that. I think funeral directors demand more than that from their suppliers. So having a structured approach in place, we chose ISO 14001, and I'm sure there are many other suppliers that have also got.
Oops.
Sorry, lost me then briefly. And it really helps to ensure that there's continuous improvement goals. But one thing I'll throw into the mix. As a company, we put together a Vivid Vision document, and that is it's an internal document to really let your staff know where the business wants to be in 3 years' time, and it's about looking at that vision of where we think we'll be in 3 years' time, and that covers all aspects of the business. But importantly, we've put sustainability and environmental goals into that Vivid Vision, and that's something we achieve when we get to the end of the current 3-year vision. So I think it's strategic planning, the structure and organisation to have processes in place, and then that helps to embed the culture.
Great. Thank you, Adam. That's really clear and helpful. Brendan, final words to our audience.
Well, I suppose what I would, really want to strongly stress is just do something. The most important thing is we can't afford to do nothing. We can't afford to hope that somebody else is going to shoulder our burden. We must all sort of move forward as a sector. I think funeral directors are so important. As I said, they're pivotal. They are the gatekeepers. They can, make Adam change his policy, change his range of products to suit their needs. And I know, being a former crematorium manager, how important it is for funeral directors to be able to trust my offering, so funeral directors can change that as well. So please, get involved.
Great. And if people want to have a conversation with you, Brendan, they can. Your contact details are somewhere. Are they on one of the slides? Or
well, just look on the website at www.ggfs.co.uk.
Great, thank you. And I'll certainly pick up the challenge and the conversation with kindred associations. And that's something that I know is in our code of practice in SAFE, that we have an environmental strategy. So thank you for that nudge. And I just want to thank you, Brendan, for really bringing this to us, and the depth and the systematic thought where this is achievable. You've made it very accessible. And that, for me, a simple-minded man like me, is really good. So thank you. And Adam, really good to hear about the journey your business is taking. And again, just some of the disciplines that you're approaching this with, and internally sharing it with your staff team, envisioning. We heard that with Lucy and Hannah as well. There are some and it sort of energizes the team, doesn't it, in terms of making a difference. It's not rocket science. We can make this happen. So thank you both very much indeed. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.